All right. Make sure if we're going live right now. Hold on 1 second here.
That says we're live.
We're live. All right. I think it worked out. I think we're both in here at the same time. Well, it's awesome. I want to thank everyone for coming. You know, everyone who's watching now, and also is going to be watching on the replay or listening on the podcast. I appreciate you tuning in to the very first The More You Know Mondays with Shelby Comics right here. We're going to be diving back and doing a kind of a history, going through the decades of comics. And we just want to just kind of have some fun and kind of nerd out about this stuff and hopefully give you guys some information. Maybe you can help with your comic collecting, take it to another level. It helps us because, hey, the more we know and the more we learn about this stuff and share, you know, the more knowledge that we all get on this. So I'm just here to have a good time. Shelby, what about you, man? What you up to?
I'm ready. You know, I've needed this creative outlet for a while. I love nerding out on comic books. I love nerding out on comic book history. I think you're a great partner to have with this, and I'm just excited. You and I seem to have a lot of the same information, but also desire, and I hope that comes through to all the people. Hey, be sure and sub up Jeff and I. You know, like, comment, subscribe. If you're watching this on the replay, leave a comment below. If you're watching this on the replay, and if there's information we missed or you know, something else that you want to add, definitely put it in the comments.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can shoot us a message on IG. All the information is down below, so everyone's links. So make sure you sub up Shelby. You know, subscribe to everyone on Instagram here. I just want to do a shout out to Titan Comics Pressing, who's here. You know, Matt, what's up, Matt Warlock? I appreciate you guys showing up. You know, hopefully you get some knowledge out of this. But again, the more communications we have, you know, the more fun this is going to be. We got some great giveaways we're going to be doing. And, you know, we want to try and keep this a little bit short. And we know everyone's got a lot of things going on right now. So we want to try and keep these between 30 minutes and an hour or so. So that's kind of the goal. But, you know, Shelby, you know, he gets going. When you get him going, talking about comic history, he keeps going.
Oh,
and remember to watch responsibly. Do not watch this while driving. If you're playing the Shelby game, the drinking game, it might be over pretty quick. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to jump right into it. We're talking about, well, actually, first, let me try and do the screen share again. I had some problems doing this earlier, but let's try and get something going here. Let's see, application window. Let me know in the chat if everyone can see this right here. All right. Okay. So what we're talking about today is the very first comic book variant. And, you know, in the immortal words of our good friend, Ricky Bobby.
Gene, if you ain't first, you're last. You know what I'm talking about? That phrase is trademark, not to use the position of Ricky Bobby.
So we're talking about the first comic book variants over there. And a lot of times people have different opinions of what that might be, what it's going to look like, you know, what is a comic variance. So we just kind of want to go into it and first kind of set a little presence of what we're kind of defining as what a variant is. So Shelby, you want to talk about what we kind of decide what kind of a variant is and kind of go with that definition so we can kind of have a clear understanding moving forward of what we're kind of considering a variant and what may not be considered a variant.
Yeah. Jeff and I were talking about this, and I think he did a great job, you know, putting us all on the same footing of understanding what we're talking about with a variant. So for us, we're going to consider a variant anytime the printing process of producing a comic book is stopped, meaning something is added, removed, changed about the comic book, and then the run continues. So this could be a change in the price. So, for example, price variants, which we're going to talk about in a later episode, adding the barcode, such as newsstand versus direct. Those are all printed at the same time. It's just they'll do a run of each, or an insert for an advertisement like the Modular that we're talking about. And a lot of times when we think about variants, we think about cover variants. And Jeff's showing here the very first comic book variant or cover variant was in 1986 with a Man of Steel. My buddy John Byrne, great work there. And so people kind of understand too. I pulled this off of my wall. I had to dust it. Didn't do a good job.
What is that?
So this is maybe make me bigger if you want to.
Oh, now you're asking me to do other things. Hold on a minute.
Do other things. Yeah, I have to look and do other things. So, you're getting there.
There you go.
All right. So I pulled this off my wall. This is whenever the printing process occurs, it's done with 4 plates, CMYK. So cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. This is the black plate for Shazam #1, the oversized Treasury edition. So you can see that when it prints, it's all the things that'll be black on the cover. And if you notice up here, the price areas are blank. That's because they'll literally do another plate to do different types of prices. So whether it's in the USA, it will do dollars and cents. If it's in Mexico, it'll do pesos. If it's in Canada, it'll do moose dollars. But yeah, and you can see the registration marks where they line up each one. And yeah, so this is what we're talking about whenever we are talking about printing plates and actually stopping the printing process. So, later on when we talk about newsstands, their black plate would have the UPC area empty, and then you'd have another plate that would be a spotty head or a UPC code. And then the same thing with like price variants. You'll see that difference there. And Whitman variants. And we'll show some Whitman variants in an upcoming episode. So, yeah.
Very cool. And a lot of people don't know this, but you actually have a lot of experience, a lot of background in printing. So that's why I appreciate having you on here so you can go over a lot of this stuff. Like, how difficult is it when we talk about, just switching a plate to do the price or to put the barcode on there? How difficult is that?
Well, it's very difficult back in the old days, right? in the 70s, 60s, well, up until really digital printing. So this black plate that I showed would, like for newspapers, it would get burned or etched through a acid process onto a sheet of metal. And so for you to change out that sheet of metal, it's a really difficult process. Plus it costs money. Like those sheets cost money to produce. And so that's why you don't see a lot of, cover variants up until the digital printing age, because just the cost of stopping the print run, changing out plates, plus the cost of producing the plate itself is very expensive. And if you hear stories about like printing companies, those presses run 24 hours a day, so they never want them to stop. And so companies would put in orders, and what they would do is they had an actual calendar. And it's like, my order has to be in at this time because at the printing company, I'm on the calendar from 10 a.m. till, 10 p.m. or something like that, where they're actually printing their products. So, yeah, it's very expensive to produce, and then expensive for the company to actually have to stop and then change something out.
Right. Yeah, I mean, even nowadays, it's still, a lot of the companies that I consult with now, they have to do a lot of printing, whether it's on film or covers, whatever they're doing. But yeah, it's a couple $1,000s if you want to do a plate. To change the little smallest thing, you'd be like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
It costs a lot. Like it stops the line, it costs them money. And Matt is right on here. He put, seeing a lot of those ads, and those covers are really cool with the photographs mixed in with the actual art. That is pretty cool. Nice, especially in the covers.
Yeah,
right. I don't know if this is true or not, but this is as far back when I was digging about as far as the covers go, with the actual first, real true cover variant is with the John Byrne Man of Steel. I remember this when this came out, and I remember being confused, going, "What is this? This is another issue?" And it actually tricked me to buy both of them from the shelf. Yeah. So this was back in the day where they started maybe the gimmicky type of stuff and getting people to get rid of their money a little bit more and separate kids from their money. But we're not talking about that part yet. We're not talking about the 80s and 90s quite yet. We're going back a little bit further right now. And we're actually starting out in 1971. So everyone hold on. I know there's not a lot in here watching right now, but there's some racy things on the screen right now. If you're listening right now, you should be tuned in right now so you can see this. But in 1971, that's when the first ad variant, you want to call that, where they have to stop the presses and they have to insert something and change things around, and that was for the National Diamond sales. And that, Shelby, you want to go into that, of what that actually meant and why they were doing it?
Well, I'll be honest, I do not know a lot about the National Diamond sales. Excuse me. It only took part during a very short time. I think we have a timeline here that we'll show in a little bit.
Yep, we'll show that coming up.
Okay. But the National Diamond sales is like your precursor to the Mark Jeweler, which is what most people know of. I've never seen I've never seen a National Diamond sales. I don't own one. And I definitely, until you found when I was doing some research, you and I both found the lingerie thing at the same time. I'm like, whoa, no lingerie in comic books. So I'm not sure if that part was in there or not, but I've definitely been hunting for a National Diamond sales.
Yeah, actually, the two covers that I'm showing right now, the Defenders and the Astonishing Marvel Features Astonishing Ant-Man 5, those are actually both available right now in my comic shop, and they are the National Diamond sales. So you can get those. They're out there. So they're out there. So what we're kind of talking about is these variants, and really why they started doing these, and what was the reason why they even put lingerie and jewelry and credit union, all this other kind of stuff in there. And that really is because it was sold to military bases. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah. Now this is where I definitely I know the most about, because this pertains to the Mark Jewelers. I'm not sure about the National Diamond sales. I'm assuming it was also similar for it.
Right. It was the same. Yep.
It's the same. Okay. So I know that back in the 80s, whenever I owned a comic store in the late 80s, people started popping up talking about, hey, have you seen these Mark Jeweler ads, and what were they about and such? And so, yeah, they were made exclusively for military bases. I know a lot of people report for stores near military bases, but you and I have talked about it.
Right.
And I think it was mainly just PXs and BXs. Which is your Air Force and Army equivalent. I also have not heard much anecdotal. I've heard actually zero anecdotal evidence of them being on Navy and Marine bases. All anecdotal evidence I found, like, hey, my father was in the Army, or my father was, or I was stationed in such and such Air Force base, we had Mark Jewelers ads in our comics. I've never heard any anecdotal evidence of Navy or Marine. And then Coast Guard definitely was not involved, because Coast Guard actually did not even get the rights to shop on PXs until later in the 90s. So,
right.
So they weren't on Coast Guard bases as far as I know.
Right.
Yeah. So to me, it seems mainly exclusive to, like I said, PXs and BXs, Air Force and Army. And yeah, you know, the whole idea, and overseas.
Right. I was going to say that. You get a lot of people from German bases, you know, military guys in German bases bringing it back and talking about it. So I've seen a lot of that kind of information. And again, just dealing a little bit with the exchanges and working with some companies that sold into them. You were kind of talking about that. Is it around the military bases along with inside the military bases? You know, and I think there could be. It certainly could be. But again, working with some companies that have sold into that, it would be kind of a logistic nightmare to kind of say, okay, not only are we getting this group of books that are made that are selling directly into the exchanges, which is very easy to do. You're shipping it to a couple of distribution centers, you're good to go. And then also to saying, you know what? And these zip codes that are around those bases that are doing well, we want to put those aside and these and give it to a distributor who's not part of the exchange, a normal distributor, and say, hey, these go over here, but these go here. It's just a lot of things can go wrong. And I just don't see that potentially actually happening in real life. Again, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen that way, but I don't see that, especially when we were talking about it's just for an advertiser.
Right.
They're just helping with an advertiser. So I think they want to do it as cleanly as possible and be like, okay, we're going to do it for you. Here's as many books that's going into there, and we're shipping it directly to the military bases, and you're good to go. I mean, I have heard of some things, and even, hey, Matthew's coming up right now, and he's talking about he has heard about it. Some Coast Guard exchanges are pretty rare now. And they did come, was it the 90s or so? They just got access to a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, it was in the 80s or 90s of when Coast Guard personnel was able to shop at PXs or BXs. But I tried to find information on when PXs were available. Like I do know this much about PXs and BXs. What you think of today as a PX definitely is not the same thing they had back in the 70s and 80s, right? Now it's like this huge, almost mall type of store where you could, you know, buy everything from video games to clothing to groceries to tires for your car, right? Back then in the day in the 70s and 80s, I'm sure is a lot more scaled down than what it is. And I'm sure that they were exclusive in large scale to specific bases, probably larger bases that would be able to house something like that. And I think looking at the Mark Jeweler itself kind of gives us an idea. So here is Thor, the Mighty Thor Marvel Spectacular from 1974. And inside is the ad for military insignia rings. And the rings they're selling in here are for Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Vietnam Marines, Army, Army Airborne, and Vietnam Army. So that definitely should give you some kind of clue as to whom they're marketing to, which is those four branches, but then also what military bases those would be available at.
No, absolutely, man. Yeah, and Wild is jumping ahead on us a little bit. But yeah, Wild Comics, you got it. They are all newsstands as well. So there's a couple of things that go along with that we'll hit up in a second right here. And that's when we're talking about the National Diamond was from that 1971, 1973. And again, we'll get these timelines in a little bit here. There's some gaps, you know, going on in there. But then the Mark Jewelers is what everyone really kind of knows. And a lot of people think the National Diamond ones are actually Mark Jewelers, but they are a little bit separate. Mark Jewelers really took over in 1973 and then ran all the way to 1991. DC stopped a little bit before that, but you can get pretty much Mark Jewelers in any kind of big name comic you want back then. And you can get the first appearance of the Punisher as a Mark Jeweler. You can get Venom. You can get all that all the way up to 91 in Mark Jewelers. So it's definitely a pretty interesting sub niche of a variant that we're talking about here. And here's some of the timelines. Shelby, I don't know if you want to go through all of them. I just want to kind of show them up there.
Yeah. I think people can replay this and take a better look. I really
take a screenshot.
I really appreciate the people on the CGC forums helping me out with getting this timeline together. But like Jeff said, the National Diamond was a very small window of 71 to 72 was National Diamond sales. And then Mark Jeweler, as far as I know, this small window of 1972 was maybe exclusive to DC, Dale Gold Key. I mean, it's a little bit fuzzy. There were some National Diamond sales seen in some books from the first 6 months or 4 months of 73. Nothing that we were able to find after that. Excuse me. And then I've never seen any of these before, but apparently there were Mark Jewelers with another inside wrap. And I think you knew a little bit more about that than I did. But in July 73, which a lot of people report that date at the beginning of Mark Jewelers, they had a Menon wrap. Then you had exclusive Mark Jewelers. Then you had an Alka-Seltzer wrap, which I had heard of. I hadn't heard of the other two. And then Bose in 1985. And I've not seen that one either. So, but yeah, definitely DC was a shorter or smaller window of only about 13 years compared to Marvel, which went all the way up to about the early 90s.
Hey, Duffy, thanks for showing up, man. Thanks for putting in the work to find us here. I appreciate it. It's hard when you're starting off the first time. The algorithm doesn't like finding anything for you. So I appreciate you jumping on here.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And hey, Captain Ramus, and anybody else I haven't said hi to yet. Wild Comics, welcome.
Wild here. Yeah, I mean the cool thing. Some more examples that we have on there for you. They were in newsstands. So when we talk about some of the different ways you can tell, obviously the first thing is going to be newsstand. You're not going to find directs that's going to be there. And then right now I've got pictured the two different kinds of stock that was really done in there. Yeah. Sometimes you'll hear people say, well, if you look through the top of the comic and you look, you'll see that cardboard in there. Let me see if we can get it looking on here.
Yeah. So this is the heavier stock because this is from the early 70s. Let me see if I can get at an angle. So you can, so you can kind of see it pretty easily at the top because this is the cardboardish insert. I'm doing the sound. But if we look at some later ones, I have a very late one here. So this is a ROM. And actually, I can show it from right here. You cannot see. And that's because this has the same as a comic book cover. So it's not a hard cardboard as the other. And so like I showed just now, if you actually have this in a bag and stuff, you cannot, see that at all. So you need to be a bit careful when you're looking. I wouldn't trust just looking straight down. I've actually bought some that was supposed to have the Mark Jeweler in it and didn't. So yeah, you just need to be careful and, actually pull the book out, which you should do anyway when you're assessing your comics. Make sure that coupon code, that Marvel stamp is still in there, and your Mark Jeweler is also.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting that you mentioned that because I've come across, back when I had a much larger collection before I sold it all off. I had so many of the Mark Jewelers in there, and I would have autographs that were signed on the inside. because a lot of them didn't want to sign the actual cover and ruin the cover. So if you're not opening up the books and looking through them, you're going to miss some of these gems. This really does add a lot to not only the value of the comic, but just, the history of the comics as well. And like Wild said, when you're pressing it, you got to be really careful with those in there too. So Wild, I don't know if you use 65 or 100 pound paper on either side of those, but same with like the digital codes. If you don't, bookmark the digital codes in there with a heavier stock paper, you'll destroy the digital codes on there, and it'll be an incomplete, book, and you get that green label from CGC. So yeah, if you're not looking at the comics, man, you can cause a lot of problems for you. So now the big thing, the reason why kind of a lot of people want to look at this and say, well, that's great and all, but do they really sell for more money? Jeff Shelby.
I need to feel you, Jerry. Show me the money. Jerry, you better yell. Show me the money. Show me the money.
I couldn't resist. Everyone missed Shelby dancing on this too. So the one cool
no,
thing,
they didn't miss a thing, I promise.
The print runs were really small in these. When you're talking about just going to a certain amount of people on a certain basis, the print runs are going to be small. I looked around, Shelby looked around. We couldn't find real solid numbers. It seems to be a general agreement of 3 to 5% of a total print run is going to the military bases. That may be a little high, I think, especially with some of the large print runs that we're getting in the 80s and 90s. But even so, even if it is 5%, that's still a very small kind of sub niche of a product and have a variant. If you can do a variant which is 5%, plus the fact they were newsstands. So newsstands were already bundled rougher. You're already going to get some ticks on there. You're already getting a little bit lower grades coming out of the gate. It's really hard to get a 9.8, as we know. We're going to have another series we talk about direct versus newsstands. But again, being a newsstand, it is a lot harder to get in a high grade on that. And then being a Mark Jeweler, do people really care that it's a Mark Jeweler? Because some people will say, I don't care if it's a Mark Jeweler. I just want the best comic I can get.
Yeah.
Then you have some completionists who are like, wow, I only want to collect Batman, Mark Jeweler variants, and I want to get them a high grade. Shelby, what have you found?
No, the same thing is I've never heard anybody say over 5%. I think 5% is generous. I would say it's probably more around 3 to 5, like you said. And one of the things I really want to do any company account for the variants in their census? Yes, CGC will.
They're listed now, yeah.
They used to designate them as Mark Jeweler inserts. I think they do call them Mark Jeweler variants now.
Yeah.
With their new labels, but they will designate Mark Jeweler inserts on the label, and I believe you can do a special search for them. Don't quote me on that, but I'm assuming that if they designate it on their label, then it would be in their census also. So what I was going to say is let's take a comparison to Newsstand. And I know this is going to be a hot topic for me coming up in one of our episodes in a week or so.
Yeah.
Is everybody is goo goo gaga over Newsstands. And let's understand that even a lot of the information of the percentage of Newsstand versus direct comes from Chuck at Mile High Comic.
Yep.
He even says that newsstands did not reach 5% until the year 2000. Right?
Oh, really? I didn't know
Let's
that.
understand that. Let's understand that. Yeah, your percentage of newsstand in the market did not reach 5% until the year 2000. So, people are paying very high dollar for a newsstand that may have been produced in the 90s, which was still 50-50, looking at Chuck's numbers. So you're talking about Mark Jewelers. Definitely the consensus is it's not over 5% of a print run at any time in their history. So you're talking about a much, much smaller print run of a book across a very long timeline versus that very small timeline of when the newsstands reached that number.
Yeah, and the one thing I didn't find out about the exchange. I assume it's the same as regular newsstands. If it's not sold, they're ripping the cover off and they're sending it back, right?
Yeah. They were able to do that. And I mean, and also let's think about this, unlike a newsstand or a cover variant, the only way if you have a Mark Jeweler is if that ad is in there, right? How many people actually ripped that out to buy that loved one a ring or to buy that, insignia. So when you even consider that now, that there was some percentage of Mark Jewelers that were actually used,
right?
Meaning they're no longer Mark Jewelers, that even drops that percentage down more of what's out there in the market versus a newsstand. You can't, rip the UPC label off a newsstand and, replace it or anything.
Right.
Yeah. So
like the Spider-Man Hobgoblin, Amazing Spider-Man trying to get one with the tattoos, it's hard to get those if it's actually used. And, we talked about this off screen a little bit, and we were trying to decide how many different kinds of variants of Mark Jeweler inserts there were. There seems to be a large, very different opinion. Was it 30 to 50, 60 different kinds? And then some of the research I was doing found that there's actually a lot more, or could be potentially a lot more different variants of that when you start taking into consideration when DC stopped advertising with Mark Jeweler and it just became Marvel in the mid 80s, late 80s and 90s on there. They used to do different codes so they can identify where people were finding the actual ads. So they can find out which ads were pulling, which books were pulling better. So if you called and said, I want to buy this engagement ring from, Amazing Spider-Man, basically, they'd be able to know by the code that was in there. So each one of those had different codes depending on which book it came from. Again, maybe if you look through some of those in those late 80s and 90s, you might see something a little bit different each time.
Yeah, you'll see a code here at the bottom that I think is what you're talking about. This number 66 is a code. Let me look at one of these other books. But Reggie Collects, I'll use him as a source, says that there was a different, and then this one says 77 at the bottom. And that is not for the year of the book, obviously. Reggie said that in the 30-year period of Mark Jeweler, which again, I don't think there's 30 whole years if we consider Mark Jeweler starting 1973 and ending in 1991. That's really like a 27-year period. But he said there's a different Mark Jeweler ad for every year. So there is at least 27 to 30 different Mark Jewelers that are ads designated for each year of them being placed in a comic book. So,
yeah, I mean, again, doing a lot of magazine advertising, I would probably have to say that there probably is more than that. Usually you'll run an ad until people get kind of tired of it, and the creator will always get tired of it before the actual consumer does. But the general rule is they have to see it 3 to 5 times at least for them to even acknowledge it or know there's even something there. Exactly. So I can guess they're probably changing it a couple times a year. And again, maybe they had different things depending on if it was a Batman book or if it was a Spider-Man book. Was it different or not? I don't know. So it's all stuff that is really hard and kind of like what Captain is saying right here. It was just an early data collection thing. Obviously Mark Jewelers is spending a lot of money on this advertising. They're paying Marvel and DC and Dell and Gold Key a lot of money to do this advertising. They want to know what their ROI is. They want to know that, hey, we're dumping X amount in DC and X amount in Marvel. Marvel is pulling a lot better than DC. Let's dump DC and put everything in with Marvel and just run with them.
Yeah. And I'd also be careful. We do know that there are Mark Jeweler ads in early gold keys, and it was only early gold keys.
Right.
From what I understand from evidence is those Mark Jewelers were on newsprint and were in every book. So unlike, the Mark Jewelers we're talking about where they're at a small print run. But again, that's anecdotal evidence I've heard with that one. I've never seen a Mark Jeweler inside a gold key book. If anybody's wanting to sell some things, I'm definitely interested at good prices. But and I never. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly what Matt is saying, and Captain is saying. All the print runs are about the same in each one of those. So when they printed off, it was the same in each one. So it just depends on the key that you're looking for. And obviously the bigger key, the bigger the premium. And I'm going to show that coming up next. But as we kind of talk about the completionists, the people really looking at this going, I want to get all Mark Jewelers. There's this hardcore niche. Comic Tom does a great job talking about that. He actually has Mark Jeweler shirts that he sells. Yeah. So there is a niche that really likes going after that. And I'll just get right into it since people are kind of asking for it right
here. And really quick, let me make so one of the things I'm going to show in an upcoming episode is we're talking about that percentage of newsstands who direct. And there is data out there of how, on average, how many books were printed. So let's just take, for example, there's going to be more Spider-Man printed than there is ROM.
What?
Yeah, I can't believe that either. But it's going to be, it's not an exact of when they stop those presses to stick the Mark Jeweler in there. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, okay, 5% of 70,000 print run of ROM equals this, so I'm going to stop it and start putting in Mark Jewelers versus a 300,000 print run of Spider-Man and then starting it. So I would probably estimate it may be a little bit more difficult in some cases to find Mark Jewelers in one versus the other, because they're not going to stop at exact, like someone with a calculator figuring out, okay, 5% is this for this 70,000 print run versus this 300,000 print run. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. I mean, they're going to be somewhat, I think, accurate because obviously they're paying for it. Mark Jewelers is paying for it, and they're only going to pay a certain amount of dollars. So whatever that dollars reaches.
Right. But what they're paying for is the number of ads that get put into comic books, not the percentage of a print run of a comic.
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question.
Yeah. So it's like we're sending you 100,000 Mark Jewelers to be put into centerfolds. So that's what they're paying for, is for 100,000 centerfolds to be put into various comics. So it could be 1% on certain print runs. It could be 5% on another print run.
Yeah.
We don't know those numbers.
Right. Yeah, that'd be interesting to kind of find out, and I'll dig into it a little more, see if we can find out any more. But that would be a hard one. I've got a couple people I can maybe reach out to and see to have a little more insight on that. But that's some really interesting stuff. And looking at kind of the general rule of thumb people have said in the past, like Reggie, like you mentioned in Comic Tom, they'll say anywhere from a 10 to 25% premium you're going to get on Mark Jewelers. I think that gap is growing a little bit more. I'm going to go through a couple of sales right now. I've got on the screen the XMen 112. So XMen 112 CGCs, all I did was CGC, so it's really easy to kind of compare. So CGC 9.0 for XMen 112. You've got the Mark Jeweler insert. sold on April 3rd for $122.50. The day before, you got the regular newsstand of 112 that sold for $94.95. So again, both newsstands, they were both bidding. You got a 23% premium just because you had that extra call out, that extra niche of hardcore people that say, I want Mark Jewelers. I'll pay a little bit extra for that. And you're getting a 23% bump on that. And if you look at something a little bit bigger, obviously the bigger the key, the spread gets even bigger. So now you're looking at XMen 121 at a CGC 9.6 with the Mark Jewelers insert, sold on March 29th for $810. And then you look on the other side, you got CGC 9.0, or sorry, it was actually 9.6. I left that over from the last slide. They're both 9.6s, just so everyone knows. Both 9.6s. 121 was actually sold on 3 different dates. So you got April 4th, April 5th, and March 31st. So all right next to where the Mark Jeweler one sold for $810, they all sold for an average of $523. So every one of those sales was between low 5s and mid 5s. So now you got a 35% premium just because you have the Mark Jeweler, again, all newsstands. So you're saying, okay, great. You've got premium on some of these key books. What about if it's just a lower grade, who cares kind of book, even though this is not a who cares kind of book. This is New Mutants 98. But this is the one I was trying to find, one where it was just a really low grade and didn't matter kind of thing. And the same thing happened again. You got the New Mutants 98 CGC 5.5, so low grade, sold on March 28th for $404. And then you've got on April 3rd, just a couple days later, it sold for $315. Now that one was a direct versus the newsstand, so maybe that's a little difference in that. But then if you look a little further down below, there was a 6.0 newsstand that sold right almost the same exact time for only $223. So it wasn't really just because it's a newsstand, it was because it had this kind of Mark Jeweler premium kind of call out that people are really kind of looking for. No matter what kind of book you got or what kind of grade you got, you can expect a 20 to a 30, 35% bump in price by just going through your comic books, looking through it, and see if you actually have one of these kind of like diamonds in the rough. What do you think, Shelby?
Yeah, no, I always say, and this is me, this is 100% me in what I do when I sell books, is I feel that Mark Jewelers should demand at least a 30 to 40% increase in price, just because of all the evidence we talked about. A minute ago, Captain Ramus asked, is there a holy grail of Mark Jeweler? As far as I know, no one's really come out and said what a whole, is there one? And that's because I just think Mark Jewelers hasn't gotten the attention or love as other types of variants have, such as
it's probably going to be the ROM you have in your hand.
It might be the ROM. I'll say this, is I have in my personal collection the first Todd McFarlane art on the Incredible Hulk, Mark Jeweler.
Oh, nice.
Okay, in a 9.0, and I would call that a pretty good one. Unlike, say, price variants, like there is the price variant for Star Wars #1, which is a holy grail, definitely goes for 10 times the amount of money as any other Star Wars. But as far as Mark Jeweler, they're not going to be found in square bounds, so you won't have one. You won't have one in, say, your giant size XMen, but you could have one in your Hulk 181. As far as I know, because it falls within those dates. So that may be a holy grail. I've never seen a Hulk 181 Mark Jeweler myself, or heard of one.
No, Punisher, Amazing Spider-Man 129,
Amazing Spider-Man 129.
So they're out there. Yeah, it's really going to depend. But you're right, with that low of a print run, with how rare it kind of is, and I really just think it's just an awareness. People like us talking about it. It's getting more popular. You get these whole flood of new people coming in collecting comics again. You have people were collecting it like I did back in the day and come back into it. They remember those kind of things. So I think it's just another way to kind of find something a little bit different, a little bit more rare, as opposed to some of like just the modern comics that are 9.8s that are going crazy numbers right now. This is something really hard to find, really difficult, low print runs. And I just don't think it's got the kind of the press that it kind of deserves yet, because I really do think it should be claiming those premiums like you're talking about. It should be, a 30 to 40% at least, premium, because you've got something so rare, especially if you top that with it being in good condition.
Yeah.
A newsstand Mark Jeweler on a military base that comes back over a 9.0, that's got to be one of the one of the holy grails. If you want to talk about holy grails, getting a good condition Mark Jeweler.
Yeah. So when for me, when I sell a Mark Jeweler, let's say it's a low grade, 6.7.0. And I am going to mark it up 30%. But let's think about that in relative terms, right? You're talking about a $10 book and me only asking $13 for it. You see what I'm saying? So it's not a huge price jump when you get into those lower grade ones. Now, when you're dealing with higher grade books, so let's say, for example, the first Todd McFarlane Hulk, right? That's an $80 or so book. Well, I think that should be a Mark Jeweler 9.0. That should be a $120 book, which is about a 40% to 50% increase. And, but that's just me and my feeling of what I think something should be. Now, I have some Star Wars Mark Jewelers. Now think about that. You could have your first Boba Fett appearance, Mark Jeweler. I have probably about 4 or 5 Star Wars Mark Jewelers. Those books are crazy hot right now. All those books are, and the prices are going up. So could Mark Jewelers, I could see a first appearance of Boba Fett, Mark Jeweler, high grade. That should be way over 40% markup to me.
That'll break all the records. I mean, you're seeing the premiums of just regular newsstands are capturing right now. People are going crazy for newsstands.
Yeah.
This has got that plus extra, so it should be claiming a lot more than just those are.
Right. And I'm just showing examples of, from different genres.
Let's see them.
This is just a small amount of what I have. But this is a reprint book. This reprints a story of Hulk. Of Thor. Should this be a higher percentage than, well, maybe a ROM, but a regular Hulk? Probably not. I would say probably not. But then, again, this is going to be a much lower print run. And did they take the same care in making sure that percentage of Mark Jewelers were placed in this lower print run than this print run, right? Because this was probably a 50,000 print run versus this being 300,000 print run, right?
And that's the one that Mark Jeweler themselves are looking at when they're looking to make sure their advertising is being done the right way. They're picking up the Hulk books and they're looking at those. They may not pick up the ROMs and the triple actions out there.
Right. Now, this is also a reprint book. This reprints Where Monsters Dwell from the 50s and the 70s. But again, these were low print runs. When did CG start marking Mark Jeweler inserts possible? Yes,
absolutely.
It is possible. Absolutely. Oh, and something I forgot to say too, on some military bases, and it's mainly overseas, you'll actually see 2 stars or a star with a circle stamped on them. That's to designate that the book was paid for. Those do demand even more value because it has the Mark Jeweler insert plus it has the stamp. So if you find a Mark Jeweler with the stamp, which will be double stars or a star with a circle, those are even a slightly bigger niche because those means overseas markets. So that meant that book had to travel from the U.S. overseas, and then from overseas back to the U.S. So
that's pure history. That's like the same to me as like store stamps. If you got a store stamp on there, I know it gets marked down because of grade. But man, I like seeing that history. I like seeing the store stamps on there. And this is, like you said, another level of seeing the star on there and a Mark Jeweler, the history that comic went through and the travel. I mean, that's pretty cool.
I think it is too. I love grease pencil. I love store stamps. I mean, yeah, I think it adds character, and I think it adds a little bit of context to the history. So.
All right, let me see if I can get back out of here. Hey, there we are.
There we are.
Well, again, I appreciate you, everyone, kind of stick around. You know, we want to try and keep this between a half an hour and an hour long kind of episodes, each one of these. You know, I see everyone's interacting in the chat. You know, Matt, Captain Ramus, Wild, I appreciate you, Duffy. Appreciate you being in here. So we're going to do a couple of giveaways. You guys stuck around, so we want to do a couple of giveaways for you. Shelby, you got a trivia question you want to do first? Give away a Mark Jeweler?
Oh my gosh, I do. And let me find what I'm giving away. I'm giving away, since it's a thing on Mark Jeweler, I'm going to give away a Mark Jeweler. I'm give away this Web of Spider-Man number 24. This actually has two things with it. One is it does have the Mark Jeweler ad on the inside, but also it's misstapled. So the staples are a little off-centered.
Has a 40% premium.
Yeah, so definitely. But yeah. And again, you know, you can see, right, they, you know, engagement rings, significant others, you know, I joined the military to pay for my baby mama and all that good stuff. But yeah, this is probably about it's probably about an 8.0 to 8.5. So I'm gonna be giving this away. And since it's Web of Spider-Man, how about we ask a good Web of Spider-Man trivia question would be trying to think of a trivia question I would know the answer to.
Who did the first cover?
I thought about that. So the first cover,
it
is a painted cover, right? It's a classic Gargoyle Spidey painted cover. Who is that artist? I'd actually have to look that up. But it sounds like So yeah, who's the cover artist for Web of Spider-Man number 1?
Oh, I said it, so hopefully no one heard me.
I didn't hear you. Yes, it's a Mark Jeweler, Captain Ramus. Giving this away to someone.
Who did the cover art for Web of Spider-Man number 1? Awesome painted black suit Spidey. Got his last name right there at the bottom. Actually, if Wild is still here, he's got it. Matt's got it. There you go. Yep, Charles Vess.
Oh, Vess. Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right, Matthew. Congratulations. I'm not sure if I know you or not. Definitely you can hit me up over on IG. I will drop my IG link and send me all your information. I will get that out to you, my good sir.
He's pretty shady. I would watch out for him. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. So I'm going to do a giveaway as well for everyone's here. I don't have a Mark Jewelers. I said all mine were sold off when I originally sold all my comics off. But I tried to do something a little bit cool. It's a little bit beat up because it is a newsstand. I looked. No, it's not signed. And no, there is no Mark Jewelers in here. But it is Secret Wars number 1 in a newsstand. It's a reader's copy. You know, it's got some damage on there. It's been well read, as well it should, because this is one of the greatest limited series there is. But we're going to do a little bit different one for this one here. So to get this one, all you have to do is tell me the exact name and issue number of what this cover is. So in the comments, let me know what comic this is actually from. I need the full name. A lot of people know the cover. They may not know the actual issue it came from.
Oh, I cannot drop my link because I don't have a wrench.
I have not given you a wrench. Yeah, your actually IG is in the description of the video.
Okay, great.
All right, so let's see if the captain, see if Matt knows what cover this is from.
No, Captain Ray.
Incredible Hulk wanting a good guess.
You might get your comic book card taken away from you for saying that. Come on.
It is green. You got green. Got to give it a little delay here. It's a classic cover. If anyone has seen any of my lives in the past or auctions, I've had that hanging up behind me for the longest time. I just switched it out. He actually, if I remember, he just got in trouble, didn't he? The artist.
He's always getting in trouble. So.
I don't know if it was a tweet or something he put out there, but yeah, he got in some hot water for that. All right, I don't see anyone else getting this right now. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'll show you the cover. There you go. King size special, Hulk #1. Captain, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate the guesses. You know, shoot me a message on IG and I'll send this out to you. See if I can get this off the screen. Captain, shoot me a message on IG and I'll get this out to you. I appreciate you being here and I appreciate the support. And man, I don't know what else we got going on. What do you think? How did the first episode go, man?
I felt pretty good about it. I think we, definitely dropped some good knowledge. I think we're going to, so let everybody know, I think we'll be alternating a little bit. So probably next week, we'll be on my channel. We're going to try for weekly. I had actually said bi-weekly and Jeff said, no, we want to be consistent. Let's do it every week. So
we're glutton for it.
Yeah, so we definitely have enough topics and stuff lined up. I know we're going to get into a pretty in-depth discussion, which may take a couple of episodes about the direct market.
Yeah.
I think that's a fascinating subject myself, which when you start putting together some of the pieces, I think you'll even find it more fascinating if you're into comic history. I've been talking to someone this past week. I've seen if I could find a comic right here close to me. I can't. But the history of the direct market really leads into what is getting hot are Whitman variants. So Reggie Collects just dropped a video a couple days ago talking about Whitman variants.
Right.
And to clarify some misnomers, that they're reprints, they're not reprints, but they were some of the very first precursors to direct comics. And I'm going to kind of show how that line connects between what we think of as direct comics, those with like the little Spidey head or Captain America head in the box, and those Whitmans. So
I want to know more.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's fascinating, and I just can't believe that we just can't call up Mark and say, "Hey, explain to us what you were doing, what your orders were, and etc." But apparently, you can't. So
yeah, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna reach out to. I've got someone I worked with in the past through DC Comics who was around during this time and would know a lot of these numbers. So I'm gonna try and either get him on so we can all talk to him, or at least get him to confirm some of the stuff that we're talking about, some of the additional questions that we have. Because I don't think anyone has really dug this deep into it and really know more about it. And there's a lot of, people guessing, and I've heard this, or someone has said this, or this might be that. So the more I think we can get kind of a concrete answer from someone who's actually there and actually oversaw it and know what was going on, I think that'd be pretty cool. And we want to try and just keep putting things a little bit different on there. So, when I was talking with Shelby, and Shelby approached and said, hey, you want to do this kind of series? Shelby's a mountain of knowledge. And I told him, he's Dr. Shelby, he's got a PhD in comicology. He knows so much about this stuff. And I love just hearing about it and talking about the history of this stuff, because you kind of geek out about it. At least I do. I think it's just really interesting about the history of this stuff. And it's not all about the million different covers on there and all this stuff. There's a lot more once you know about it. And, like Shelby was talking about, how directs actually started and why they started. And you kind of go into these different subcategories and niches, like pedigree comics we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about all the different price variants and why they were and where they were. And, so there's a lot of things we can keep going into. And we've got a whole list of things we'll go into. And we want to put something out just a little bit different to give you just a little bit more knowledge, or be able to apply that to something that's more tangible. That's why I really want to put those numbers in, to show that these comics, these Mark Jeweler inserts, are selling for a premium, and you should be asking for a premium. And just to make sure you open your comics, look at your comics. And if there's anything else that anyone wants to see, please put it in the chats down below. Reach out to us on Instagram. If you would like to come on and talk about some of the stuff, we'd love to have more people from the community in here. So again, I really appreciate everyone kind of tuning in and listening to this and interacting with us. And Shelby, thank you again so much. This is great.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
I look forward to next week. Like I said, next week it'll be on Shelby's channel. So make sure you go over and sub Shelby's channel there. If you're not subbing me yet, make sure you sub me. Also turn on the notifications. I know everyone says turn on the notifications, but what I want to do again is a little bit different. If you turn on the notifications, I'm just going to do sporadic kind of pop-ups where I'm just going to go live real quick. And if you got a notification, you'll know it. And I'm just going to be on there for like 5 minutes. I'm going to do a quick giveaway. So if you got notifications on, you're going to get notified. You're going to get some cool stuff out of it. And it actually makes a reason why you should turn on the notifications, as opposed to just saying, hey, turn it on. No one wants to get spammed. I want to make sure you get some value, and I want to make sure we bring a lot of value to you guys. So again, I appreciate everything. Captain, thank you so much. Matt, appreciate it.
Yep, Matt.
Kennedy, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you jumping in here. And again, hit us up. And until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Peace, love, and comics.